I built that bridge with my own hands. Not for the HOA, not for their contractors, and sure as hell not for their cement trucks. The first time they crossed it, I warned them. The third time, I decided to make them remember what happens when you ignore a soldier's warning. The bridge stood at the far edge of my property, stretching over a narrow creek that glimmered like liquid bronze under the Texas sun. It wasn't much. 2 concrete supports, steel beams, timber planks, and my sweat holding it all together. After 20 years in the Army Corps of Engineers, I knew how to build something that lasted. When I bought this land, it was a peaceful spot outside of Kerrville. Quiet, open skies, longhorns in the distance, and neighbors who waved without asking questions. Then the HOA formed. A handful of newcomers decided we needed order, aesthetics, and community standards. They didn't build this place. We did, folks like me. But once the HOA got power, they started acting like kings with clipboards. It started small, notices about lawn height, approved mailbox styles, and paint colors. I didn't care much, but then they approved construction on a community recreation area right across my land's access road. And to reach it, their contractors had to use my bridge. The first morning I saw a cement truck rumbling across the planks, my heart jumped. That bridge was designed for small vehicles, my pickup, maybe a tractor, not 10 tons of concrete and rebar. I ran out of the workshop waving my arms. "Hey, stop that truck!" I yelled. The driver, a young guy with mirrored sunglasses, just shrugged. "HOA said it's fine, man." That night, I left a voicemail for the HOA president, a woman named Linda Kravitz. You know the type. High hair, pearl earrings, fake smile, and a voice that dripped with control. She didn't answer, of course. But the next morning, I had a notice taped to my mailbox. Unauthorized signage or interference with HOA contracted personnel will result in fines. Fines. For trying to protect my own property. I went to the next HOA meeting at the community hall. I wasn't a regular attendee. I preferred to mind my land and my business. But that night, I showed up early and sat front row. Linda stood at the podium, perfectly rehearsed. "We're excited about the progress on the new park. Once complete, property values will increase for everyone." When it came time for open comments, I raised my hand. "Linda," I said, "that bridge you're using, that's mine. It's not rated for heavy trucks. You're gonna damage it, or worse, someone will get hurt." She smiled thinly. "Mr. Carter, the HOA has easement rights for community improvement projects. It's all in the charter." "No," I said, leaning forward, "that charter doesn't give you the right to destroy private property." She pursed her lips. "If you'd like to dispute the matter, you can file a complaint, but I assure you, the board has reviewed everything with legal counsel." I looked around the room. Half the people avoided eye contact, the rest were nodding along, hypnotized by her fake confidence. I left before the meeting ended. I could feel the heat in my chest, the same kind I used to feel before a mission went south. 2 days later, another cement truck crossed, then a gravel hauler. The bridge creaked like an old man's bones. I parked my truck sideways across the entrance that night and hung a metal sign that said, "Private property, no access." The next morning, someone had removed it. The same afternoon, I found a letter. "Obstruction of community development access is a violation of Article 3, Section 4. Immediate removal required." That's when I knew. This wasn't carelessness. It was control. I started documenting everything. Photos, videos, weight estimates, tire marks on the boards. I even placed a trail cam under the bridge to capture plate numbers. My buddy Tom, another veteran and local mechanic, came by one evening while I was inspecting the support beams. "Feels like it," I muttered, tightening a bolt that had come loose. "They keep running trucks across this thing. I warned them it's not built for that weight." He crouched next to me, running his hand along the cracked timber. "She's holding up. For now. But one more of them big boys, and she's done. I looked up at the road, dust rising in the sunset. If they want a war, they'll get one. But I'll do it by the book. The next morning, I found Linda parked at the end of my driveway. She stepped out of her SUV, clipboard in hand, wearing heels that didn't belong on dirt. "Morning, Mr. Carter," she said sweetly. "We received your letters. I just wanted to explain that the board has authority under community infrastructure regulations." "Authority doesn't mean ownership," I said. She smiled. "You seem like a reasonable man, but obstructing community progress can lead to legal consequences. We all want to avoid that, don't we?" I studied her face, the way she smiled without ever blinking. I'd seen that look overseas on bureaucrats who sent men into bad situations with clean hands. "Ma'am," I said, calm as I could manage, "if another truck crosses my bridge, you'll be the one facing consequences." Her smile faltered just enough for me to see the crack beneath. Then she turned and drove off, tires spinning gravel in her wake. I reinforced the bridge that weekend, adding warning signs and reflective cones, but part of me knew it wasn't going to stop them. People like Linda didn't stop until someone made them. Sure enough, the following Tuesday, I heard the deep growl of diesel engines again. 2 cement trucks crossing my bridge like they owned it. I stepped out of the workshop, heart pounding, phone recording in my hand. The boards groaned under the weight. One of the drivers yelled, "You're good. Keep going." I shouted over the noise, "You're trespassing." He yelled back, "Talk to your HOA." And then I heard it, a sharp splintering crack echoing beneath the bridge. The driver froze. Another crack. The rear wheels tilted slightly as the support beam gave way. "Get off it," I screamed. He slammed it in reverse, barely making it back to solid ground. The bridge shuddered, then settled, broken but not gone. I stood there in silence, watching water ripple under the collapsed corner. My bridge was wounded, so was my patience. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at a folder full of documents, photos, HOA letters, emails, and every ounce of proof I'd collected. I poured a glass of whiskey, my hands steady, but my jaw tight. They wanted to play legal games? Fine, I'd play harder. I drafted a certified letter, citing trespass, property damage, and negligence. I gave them 72 hours to respond before I filed a lawsuit. Then I did something else, something that wasn't in the book. Not illegal, but clever. I designed a trap. Not for people, for trucks. A reinforced gate, pressure sensors, and retractable steel spikes that could be raised from the ground when the bridge was closed. I had the materials from my old Army engineering days and a few friends who owed me favors. If the HOA wanted to keep crossing that bridge, they'd have to pay the toll. When I built that bridge years ago, I built it with trust. But when trust broke, I built something else. Something that will bite back. The following weekend, the Texas sun hit like a hammer. It was one of those mornings when the cicadas were already screaming before 8. I was out early, standing by the bridge with a thermos of black coffee and a mind full of blueprints. Tom pulled up in his rusted pickup, dust cloud trailing him. "You really gonna do it?" he asked, stepping out and wiping sweat from his brow. I nodded, rolling up the drawings across the hood. "You said it yourself. She's one load away from giving out. I'm not letting them finish the job." He studied the plans, eyes widening a little. Retractable spikes, pressure triggers. Jesus, Carter, this is some military grade stuff. I smirked. It's just steel and logic. They want to act like they own my road? Fine. Let's see how their trucks like a little surprise. We spent 2 days cutting and welding under the heat, the smell of burned metal mixing with mesquite smoke from my grill. By Sunday afternoon, the mechanism was ready, simple, effective, and completely legal. The spikes weren't meant to hurt anyone. They were retractable steel rods set into a reinforced plate just before the bridge entrance, controlled by a buried switch near my mailbox. If I flipped it on, no vehicle heavier than a pickup was getting through. Tom looked at it when we were done and whistled low. "You sure this ain't overkill?" I stared across the creek, where the newly poured concrete slabs of the so-called community park glared back at me like an insult. "Tom," I said quietly, "there's no such thing as overkill when someone disrespects your home." The next few days were quiet, too quiet. No trucks, no notices, no Linda. I thought maybe, just maybe, my last letter had scared them into backing off. But that peace didn't last. Thursday morning around 10, I heard the unmistakable sound of heavy engines again. 2 trucks, different company this time, Lone Star Concrete. I watched from my porch, hands clenched. The first truck slowed near the entrance, the driver leaning out to check something. He frowned, reading my new sign. Bridge rated for 4 tons. Trespassers assume full liability. Then he radioed someone, shrugged, and started rolling forward. That's when I flipped the switch. The sound it made was beautiful, a sharp clang of steel locking into place under the gravel. The front wheels hit the metal plate and instantly lost traction. The truck stopped, dead. The driver cursed, climbed out, kicked at the plate, and yelled something into his radio. Within minutes, they're like a storm. She got out, sunglasses glinting. "Mr. Carter," she called, voice syrupy sweet. "You're obstructing community access again. You know this is illegal." I walked down slowly, calm as a lake before thunder. Illegal would be destroying someone else's bridge. This? I tapped the metal plate with my boot. "This is safety." She frowned. "Safety doesn't involve weapons." "It's not a weapon," I said. "It's reinforcement. Keeps my property from collapsing." Her tone sharpened. "The HOA will be contacting our attorney. You're interfering with your little empire," I cut her off. "You're done, Linda. Every truck you sent is on record. Every violation documented. Keep pushing, and you'll be the one explaining it in front of a judge." For the first time, she didn't have a comeback, just a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You've made a serious mistake, Mr. Carter. We'll see what the law says." She turned sharply and got back in her car. Tom came by later that evening, watching the sunset bleed orange across the pasture. "You sure you want to go head-to-head with her?" he asked. I sipped my beer. "I've gone head-to-head with worse, and this time I'm not taking orders." He nodded slowly. "She'll try to push you into court." "That's exactly where I want her," I said. 3 days later, I got a certified letter from a law firm in Austin. Cease and desist all obstruction of HOA construction efforts. Failure to comply will result in immediate legal action. I smiled because that meant it was working. I spent the next week gathering everything: timestamps, footage, repair estimates, and even a copy of the land survey showing the bridge well within my private property line. But while I prepared, Linda wasn't done. She never was. It was early Saturday morning when I heard metal clanging outside. I walked out onto my porch and froze. 2 men in safety vests were there with bolt cutters trying to remove my gate chain. "Hey," I shouted, storming down the path. "Step away from that gate." One of them turned. "HOA authorization, sir. We've been instructed to access the bridge for maintenance." "Maintenance," I barked. "You're trespassing. Put the cutters down." They hesitated, clearly not expecting a 6-foot ex-soldier to appear before breakfast. Linda's USV rolled up seconds later. Of course she was behind it. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," she said smoothly, stepping out. "We're here to ensure community safety." I pointed at the workers. "They're cutting my gate." She gave me that infuriating little smile. The board authorized access. If you'd read the updated easement, I own this road, Linda, I said, voice shaking with anger. You step 1 foot more past that gate, and I had a sheriff out here faster than you can spell HOA. Her expression didn't change, but the tension in her jaw told me she knew I wasn't bluffing. She motioned for the workers to stand down. We'll be filing an injunction, she said, turning to leave. Do it, I called after her. You're digging your own grave. That night, I sat on the porch with Tom, looking out at the bridge lit faintly by the moonlight. You really think she'll go to court? He asked. I sipped my beer. Oh, she will, I said quietly. But she doesn't know I've already filed first. He chuckled. You sly bastard. I smiled faintly, watching the creek shimmer below. You learned a few things in the Army, like how to make sure the other side fires first so you can win clean. A week later, the papers arrived. Carter versus Willow Creek HOA. Trespassing, property damage, and negligence. The hearing was scheduled for late May. I didn't have a lawyer, didn't need one. I'd done my research, had my documentation, and I knew how to keep my cool. But Linda, she'd have a full legal team, paid by everyone's HOA fees. I could already picture her smirk when she walked into that courtroom. That thought only made me stronger. 2 days before the court date, something strange happened. I was walking back from the workshop when I saw tire tracks, fresh ones, leading down towards the bridge. My stomach sunk. I sprinted, boots thudding on dirt. When I got there, I saw it. A third-party truck, smaller this time, halfway across the bridge, wheels sinking slightly with a damaged support beam sagged. No HOA permit, no escort, no sense. I waved my arms, yelling, "Back it up! You can't cross that!" Before I could finish, the beam groaned loudly. The driver panicked, hit the gas, and the left rear wheel dropped through the deck with a deafening crack. The whole truck tilted, spilling concrete into the creek below. I froze. Adrenaline slammed through me as the driver climbed out, shaken but unhurt. He looked at me pale. I was told it was safe. HOA said it was reinforced. I pulled out my phone, recording everything. You got that in writing? He nodded, trembling. They emailed me yesterday, said to deliver before Monday. My hands tightened around the phone. I knew exactly what Linda had done. She wanted one more load poured before the court hearing, proof that construction was ongoing. Instead, she just handed me Exhibit A. That night I sat under the porch light reviewing the footage. The sound of the cracking beam echoed in my head. The driver's words, Linda's lies. Tom called. You okay, man? I'm fine, I said, but the HOA isn't. Monday came fast. The courthouse in Kerrville was small, built of limestone, the kind that holds heat like a skillet. I wore my best boots, clean jeans, and a pressed shirt. No lawyer, just me and my evidence. Linda showed up in a navy suit, flanked by 2 attorneys who looked like they charged by the minute. She didn't look at me. When the judge entered, everyone stood. Case of Carter versus Willow Creek Homeowners Association, the clerk announced. The judge, an older man with weathered eyes, looked over the documents. Mr. Carter, you're representing yourself? Yes, sir. Proceed. I stood, calm, collected. Your Honor, this is a case.
I stood, calm, collected. Your Honor, this is a case about trespass, damage, and abuse of authority. The HOA has repeatedly used my privately owned bridge without consent, ignored warnings about weight limits, and caused structural damage. I have video evidence, repair estimates, and statements from a contractor who was misled by the HOA. Linda's lawyer objected, saying, The HOA acted within community easement rights. The judge raised a hand. We'll see about that. I played the video of the truck falling through. The courtroom went silent. Then the email. Printed. Time-stamped. Signed by Linda. The judge's eyebrows rose slightly. "Mrs. Kravitz," he said, "did you instruct this contractor to deliver on this property 2 days ago?" Linda shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, the HOA board approved routine work. We were unaware." The judge leaned forward. "Unaware of what? That this bridge isn't HOA property?" Her lawyer tried to interject, but the judge silenced him. "This is serious negligence," he said firmly. "And it appears the plaintiff has substantial proof." Linda's face drained of color. By the end of that hearing, the judge didn't give a final ruling. Not yet. He wanted a property assessor to confirm boundaries. But I knew what that meant. The HOA's power trip was about to collapse, just like that bridge almost did. And me, I wasn't done yet. You can only push a man so far before he stops defending and starts striking back. For me, that line was crossed the day Linda tried to turn my land into her kingdom. The courthouse hearing might have ended, but the fight had only just begun. That's where Linda made her first real mistake. She assumed she could influence the results. 3 days later, a man named Jerry Alvarez from the county assessor's office came by to evaluate my land. He was polite, middle-aged, and all business. "Mr. Carter," he said, shaking my hand, "got word from the county to confirm the survey lines and easement claims. Shouldn't take long." "Appreciated, Jerry. I've got all the documentation ready." We walked down the dirt path toward the bridge, the air thick with cedar and dust. Jerry crouched beside the boundary marker, a small iron post buried years ago when I bought the property. He brushed the dirt off, frowned, then looked up at me. "This marker's legit. Old but official. You weren't kidding." I handed him the copy of my deed and survey map. "Bridge is entirely on my property. HOA's claim stops 100 feet before it." He nodded slowly, lips tightening. "Then they've been trespassing. Repeatedly." "Yep." He took some photos, marked coordinates with his GPS, then said, "You'll get my report by next week. And between us, I've dealt with that HOA before. You're not the first they've steamrolled." When he left, I felt a small spark of hope, but I'd been around too long to think Linda would just back down. Sure enough, 2 days later, I got a letter claiming my bridge violated environmental guidelines and posed a threat to community water flow. They were accusing me of polluting the creek. It was absurd, but smart. Linda knew how to weaponize bureaucracy. I marched straight to the HOA office that afternoon. It was inside a sterile little building near the subdivision entrance, all glass and gray carpet. The receptionist looked up nervously as I entered. "Mr. Carter, the board isn't taking visitors without appointment." "I'm not here to visit. I'm here to deliver." I dropped a thick manila envelope on the counter. Photos, videos, and a written demand for immediate cessation of all construction until the court's review. Linda stepped out of her office right then, wearing her trademark power suit and fake smile. "Mr. Carter," she said smoothly, "you really should have called ahead." "I don't call ahead for trespassers." Her smile didn't break. "I see you're still taking this personally. You broke my bridge, damaged my property, lied to the court. Yeah, I'd say that's personal." For a second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear, or maybe calculation. Then she leaned closer, lowering her voice. "You think you're intimidating me, but you're not the kind of man who wins these fights, Mr. Carter. You don't have a lawyer. You don't have influence. You're just—" I cut her off, voice cold as steel. "I'm the man who built the bridge you keep trying to cross." And I walked out. That night I couldn't sleep. The sound of the creek echoed through my open window, and every creak of the old house felt like pressure in my chest. I thought about everything I'd lost before, soldiers I buried, places that had burned, and now somehow this fight with a suburban HOA had stirred that same fire in me. I wasn't just defending property anymore. I was defending principle. A few days later, Tom called. "You're not going to believe this. Heard through the grapevine the HOA is trying to get emergency funding from residents to repair your bridge." I laughed, a low, bitter laugh. Of course they are. Let them collect all they want. They won't lay another drop of concrete on my land. But Tom's tone darkened. "They might try anyway. Linda's desperate. You should keep your eyes open." He was right. That weekend, I set up new trail cameras, this time hidden in the trees, covering every angle of the bridge. I also added motion sensors linked to a small alarm inside my workshop. If anyone crossed that bridge without permission, I'd know instantly. I even left one camera visible, just to make them nervous. It didn't take long. Sunday night around 11:30, the motion alarm buzzed. I grabbed my flashlight and rifle, not loaded, just for presence, and headed down the path. The air was thick with humidity, cicadas buzzing like static. When I got close, I saw them. Two figures in reflective vests and headlamps. They were spraying something on the damaged beam, some kind of sealant. "Hey!" I barked. "Step away from that bridge!" They froze. One turned, and I saw the HOA logo on his sleeve. "Maintenance crew, authorized by the board," he shouted. "Not authorized by me," I snapped. "You're trespassing." The second guy muttered, "She said it was fine." I stepped closer, light shining on their faces. "Who's she?" "Mrs. Kravitz," he admitted, voice cracking. "Get off my property," I growled. "Now." They didn't argue. They ran. By morning, I had crystal clear footage of the whole thing. I uploaded it to a secure drive, printed copies, and sent them straight to the county sheriff and the judge's clerk. This wasn't just civil trespass anymore. It was criminal. When Linda got the notice, I knew it hit home, because for the first time in weeks, I didn't hear a word from her. No trucks, no letters, no activity. Just silence. It was almost peaceful, until peace turned to paranoia. A few nights later, around 2 a.m., I woke to a strange rumbling sound. Not engines, not trucks. I grabbed the flashlight and looked out the window. The creek shimmered, but something was off. I threw on my boots, ran out into the night, and stopped dead at the bridge. Someone had stacked sandbags and concrete blocks along the edge, enough to reroute the creek's flow. They were trying to flood my property. I felt my blood boil. That was no longer bureaucracy. That was sabotage. The next morning, I called the sheriff's office directly. Deputy Wallace, a solid man with 30 years on the force, came out to inspect. "Damn shame," he said, squatting beside the sandbags. "Whoever did this knew what they were doing." "HOA," I said flatly. "No one else has a reason." He nodded. "You got cameras here?" "Always." He followed me to the workshop where I pulled up the footage. There it was, grainy but clear enough. A silver SUV, headlights off. Two figures unloading blocks. Wallace's jaw tightened. "That's a license plate I can run." "Good," I said, "because I'm done playing nice." The sheriff's report was filed that afternoon. Property interference, attempted flooding. When word got around the community, neighbors started whispering. Some stopped waving when Linda passed by. Others started asking questions. HOA wasn't as united as she wanted people to believe. By the time the second court date came, I had half the neighborhood behind me. People who'd been fined for silly things, flags, fences, holiday lights, started sharing their stories. They were tired of her. Linda still showed up looking perfect,
pearl earrings, navy dress suit, but I saw the cracks, the tired eyes, the twitch in her jaw when the judge entered. The property assessor's report was damning. Every inch of the bridge, the road, the land, all mine. The judge turned to her lawyer. You argued this was within HOA easement. Yes, Your Honor, based on prior interpretations. The judge held up a hand. Those interpretations are wrong. The HOA had no right of access. None. Linda's composure slipped for the first time. She clenched her hands, nails digging into her palms. Then the judge turned to me. Mr. Carter, you'll be compensated for all damages once assessed, and the HOA will issue a formal cease order. I nodded once. Thank you, sir. As I sat down, I felt the weight of months finally lift off my chest, but only halfway, because I knew Linda. She wouldn't go quietly. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Local news had picked up the story after the sheriff's report leaked. Mr. Carter, is it true your HOA tried to flood your land? One woman asked, shoving a microphone forward. I hesitated, then met the camera straight on. They tried to break what I built, but sometimes you have to let people destroy themselves. Behind me, I saw Linda being escorted to her car by her attorneys, face pale as chalk. She caught my eye for a brief moment, and in that second, I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That night, the wind carried the scent of rain. I sat by the creek, listening to the bridge groan softly in the wind. Tom pulled up, headlights cutting through the darkness. So, you won? I said on paper, but she's not done. Not until she loses something that actually hurts. Tom sighed, cracking open a beer. You planning another trap? I looked at the reflection of the bridge in the water, half shadow, half light. No, I said quietly. Not yet. This time, she's going to set it for herself.
Revenge isn't about anger. It's about patience. Waiting for the moment when your enemy steps into the hole they dug for you. And Linda was already halfway in. The day after the court hearing, the neighborhood was different. You could feel it, like the air had changed. Folks waved again. Some stopped by to shake my hand. Even people who used to avoid me, the by-the-book types who thought the HOA was law, started sharing quiet stories. Turns out, Linda had fined one guy for using a non-approved mailbox color. Another family got a $700 penalty because their kids left chalk drawings on the sidewalk. They weren't just rules, they were weapons. And now that someone had stood up to her, they were remembering what it felt like to fight back. Tom and I were at the bridge the next morning, checking for flood damage, when his phone buzzed. He frowned. You might want to see this. It was a post from the HOA Residents Forum. Linda had made an announcement. Due to ongoing legal conflicts, the HOA will be implementing temporary special assessments to cover legal fees. All homeowners are required to contribute. The comments were brutal. People were furious, some threatening to quit the association altogether. Tom chuckled. She's losing a man. Not fast enough, I said, watching the creek flow under my bridge. She's still got something planned. How do you know? Because people like Linda don't quit until they're dragged out. Sure enough, that night, she proved me right. I was sitting in my workshop reviewing security footage when I saw a familiar face appear on one of the feeds. Bradley Jenkins, HOA board treasurer. He wasn't supposed to be anywhere near my property, but there he was, sneaking down the trail with a flashlight. I grabbed my jacket and moved quietly down the path, using the trees as cover. The moonlight made everything silver and sharp. Bradley stopped at the bridge, crouched, and pulled something from his pocket. It looked like a tracking device. He bent down, sticking it under one of the railings. I stepped out of the shadows. You planning to install GPS on all the bridges in Texas or just mine? He jumped like he'd seen a ghost. Mr. Carter, I was told by Linda, you're trespassing. Again. He stammered, I'm sorry, I didn't. I pointed toward the road. Walk, don't run, and tell her next time she wants to spy on me, she can come herself. He nodded quickly and bolted. When I checked the device later, it wasn't a tracker. It was a listening bug. She was trying to record me. That was the moment I decided it was time to end this, on my terms. If she wanted to play dirty, I'd play smarter. I called an old buddy from my Army days, Mick, a private investigator now working in Houston. Told him everything. Sounds like she's crossing into felony territory, he said. You want me to dig into her finances? Yeah, I said. Find out what's under that perfect little suburban smile. 2 weeks later, Mick called back with a grin in his voice. Bingo, he said. You were right. She's been rerouting HOA funds, personal trips, luxury spa payments, all marked as administrative expenses. You've got embezzlement, mail fraud, and probably perjury if the IRS ever looks. I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the creek. You sure? Got the receipts, my man. Want me to send them over? Send them to me and the county DA. The next board meeting was packed. Dozens of residents crammed into the HOA hall, muttering under their breath. The air was thick with tension. Linda stood at the podium, trying to project authority. Please, everyone, settle down. The financial reports will be addressed. I stood up in the back. Then let's address them. Every head turned. I walked to the front, a manila folder in hand. Linda's eyes widened just a little. I dropped the folder onto the podium. These are receipts from your so-called administrative expenses. Thousands of dollars in personal charges, hotel stays, jewelry, trips. You used homeowners' money. That's not true. Those were... Really? Because the treasurer over there, I nodded to Bradley, told me he never signed off on any of them. Bradley looked like he wanted to disappear. The crowd erupted. People shouted. One woman yelled, "You made us pay for your Vegas trip?" Linda slammed the gavel. "Order! Order!" But it was over. You could see it in their eyes. She'd lost control. And right on cue, 2 uniformed deputies stepped inside. "Mrs. Kravitz, we have a warrant for your arrest for financial misconduct and misuse of association funds." Her face drained of color. As they let her out, she locked eyes with me. There was no smugness left, just fury. "This isn't over," I said softly. "Oh, it's over for you. You just don't know it yet." The board collapsed within a week. The HOA was dissolved by emergency vote. Neighbors celebrated, throwing a small cookout by the lake. For the first time in years, people were free. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Linda wasn't done, because I hadn't seen her house lights on since the arrest. And then, one night, they were on. It was late, maybe past midnight, when I saw the glow through the trees. I went out, quietly, my flashlight off. Her car was gone, but in the faint light, I saw movement inside the house, a silhouette pacing back and forth. Then headlights. A black SUV pulled up. A man got out, handed her something, a thick folder. I couldn't hear their words, but I didn't have to. She was trying to fight back. I checked the next morning and found new damage to the bridge, a broken post, a fresh tire track in the mud. That was the last straw. I decided to rebuild the bridge, but not the same way. This time, I added a reinforcement trap beneath the main span, a mechanical pressure latch tied to a sound alarm and floodlight system. If any vehicle crossed without my key code, the bridge wouldn't collapse, but it would trigger a massive siren, floodlights, and automatic camera recording. and all the footage would upload instantly to cloud storage. It wasn't just a bridge anymore. It was bait. 3 nights later, the alarm screamed. I bolted upright, grabbed my phone, and pulled up the camera feed. There, on the screen, a cement truck. Again, unmarked, headlights off, rolling slow across my bridge. But this time, as soon as the tires hit the middle, the sirens exploded and the floodlights turned night into day. The driver panicked, slammed the brakes, but too late. The weight shifted, one side gave way, and the truck tipped halfway into the creek. Water splashed 20 feet high. I ran out, phone recording the whole scene. Linda was there, standing by the trees, wearing a hoodie. When she saw me, she froze. "Smile for the camera," I said. She bolted, slipping in the mud. I didn't chase her. I didn't need to. Everything was on video. By dawn, the sheriff was back. The scene looked surreal. A cement truck half submerged in the creek, debris everywhere. Wallace took one look and said, "You set her up?" I shook my head. "She set herself up. I just made sure the trap was visible." He chuckled. "You always were one step ahead, Carter." That footage spread like wildfire. News stations ran it. Local HOA president caught in midnight property attack. The public loved it. One of those rare stories where the underdog wins. The DA added new charges for property damage and trespassing. Linda's lawyers tried to spin it as an accident, but the video didn't lie. She'd finally destroyed herself, exactly like I said she would. They say revenge doesn't change what was done to you. Maybe that's true, but sometimes it changes the kind of man you have to become afterward. The courthouse smelled like dust, coffee, and old paper. The scent of bureaucracy and truth waiting to collide. I'd been here before, years ago, for a land dispute, but this time was different. This time I wasn't here to defend myself. I was here to watch a woman answer for what she'd done. Linda sat at the defense table, shoulders tense beneath a blazer that didn't fit her anymore, too tight, like her pride was bursting through the seams. Across from her, the DA laid out everything: the trespassing, the embezzlement, the attempted property damage, the surveillance devices. The jury watched the video from my cameras, that cement truck sinking into the creek under floodlights. Every second of it played like a confession. When the video ended, you could have heard a pin drop. Linda's attorney stood. "My client was under duress. She believed she was acting under HOA authority." The judge raised his hand. "Mr. Hendricks, there is no longer an HOA. That authority does not exist." He sat down slowly. Linda didn't look up. When it was my turn to testify, I kept it simple. I didn't want any of this. I just wanted them to stay off my land. I built that bridge with my own hands to connect my home to the rest of the world. They turned it into a battlefield. The DA asked, "Why install that security system? The sensors, alarms, the automatic recording?" "Because I knew they'd come back, and I wasn't going to let them take anything else from me. Not again." Linda finally looked at me then. Her eyes weren't cold anymore. They were hollow. "I was trying to make things better," she whispered. "You didn't have to humiliate me." I stared at her, and for a moment, I saw not a villain, but a woman who'd built her entire world out of control and then watched it collapse in her own hands. "Linda," I said quietly, "you did that yourself." The jury was out for less than 2 hours. Guilty, on every charge. The judge handed down a 3-year sentence, reduced for cooperation, but enough to send a message. When she stood to be escorted out, she turned to me one last time. There was no anger left, just resignation. "Maybe you were right. Maybe I crossed the wrong bridge." After the verdict, I walked out into the Texas sun. It was warm, the kind of warmth that sinks into your skin and reminds you you're alive.